Hi, this is Ed in San Diego. It's October 1, 2025. A very special guest today is Stephen Howard, longtime collaborator, uh, friend, client, just wonderful to know Stephen. He is a genius at writing books, and actually he's a genius at coaching, executive coaching. And today's show is going to focus on, I got to put these on so I get it right, feedback. I'm going to read this. Effective feedback. What is effective feedback and why is it difficult to achieve? So these are some guideline questions that Stephen will address. Why is most workplace feedback ineffective? I didn't know it was or wasn't. Effective feedback requires a mindset change. What is that mindset? What kind of change? Stephen's going to explain that. Do employees receive enough feedback in the workplace? How often? What kind? The attitude? The results? Is it dictatorial or collaborative? Finally, why are managers and leaders hesitant to give feedback? Well, this is going to be an education today. So we'll be right back with our show. Thank you. This is Ed again in San Diego. Welcome back to Global TV Talk Show. Our very special guest, two guests today in studio is Christian TerNedden, who's, I need to get your title correct. Is it mobility director, leader?
No, it's just supervisor because In and Out is not about titles. Like the director is HR director is the number two in the HR in the company. So yeah, I'm a supervisor, but it's a functional thing. I do run the mobility program for In and Out.
All right, that's great. And so that is part within the HR department?
That's right.
I see. People matter, right?
Yes.
And all about people today is Stephen Howard, 26 book author on leadership and having the right attitude, the right framework. I'm probably not saying this correctly, Stephen, so please correct me. Makes for good decisions. And of course, the other, Stephen, leading for sustained success. I'm honored to have this opportunity with you in a multi-edition series going deep. So this is about feedback, effective feedback. It just seems like it's an obvious thing to me as an outsider. What do you think about that?
I don't think you worked in enough large corporations. I
Well,
think
that's for sure.
And small,
how large and small. Christian,
small in particular.
yeah, Christian, I can testify to the fact that in not in solo entrepreneur operations, but as Christian said, small entrepreneurial, large corporations, feedback is pretty much a disaster in many cases.
Yeah. So why is that? I know this is going to be a long interview here, a lot of words, but why is it because of the attitude of the middle manager rather than the top people?
Yeah, it's partly that, it's the fear, but most importantly, it's that most middle managers have not been adequately trained in how to share feedback. And I use the word share very specifically. We always talk about give feedback. I'm going to give Christian feedback. Well, giving feedback has a connotation of a one-way discussion, or not even discussion, just one-way
I have to
communication.
receive it from you. I may
Pardon
not
me?
want to, but I have to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's going to sit there. His body language is going to be, he's going to sit back. He's going to fold his arms.
Yeah.
look out his window. He's not going to be interested if I say I'm going to give you feedback. But if I'm going to share feedback with somebody, that indicates that it's going to be a conversation, a two-way conversation, and there's nothing to fear about that. But the other part of the fear is very quickly is people are afraid when giving feedback, particularly how the other person is going to respond. And
Right.
so if I fear that Christian's going to get upset about this, he's going to get angry. It's going to damage our relationship if I give him this feedback. When I wake up in the morning, I'm hesitant to do it, and I find all kinds of reasons to postpone it. And then if I do have the conversation with Christian, I go into it. I'm uncertain. I'm hesitant. It's not a quality conversation, and therefore it's not effective at all. And I'm sure Christian's been on both sides of those equations.
I have. I would say I agree. First of all, I agree 100%. I think to your point, you mentioned middle management, and yes, that's definitely worth exploring. They're in the middle. They're kind of getting it from both sides, and I'd say I'm part of that. But I would say if you look at the common denominator here, it is the lack of training. It doesn't matter whether you're an entrepreneur, small business owner, middle manager, and definitely executive who's just never been trained or doesn't care about being trained in that particular field. That's the common denominator. And if you look at what would the flip side to that be, it would be somebody who is trained, who knows how to prepare, who doesn't go into the conversation the way Stephen just described, because as with any situation, it's uncomfortable. If you're trained, you can kind of rely on your training, right? You know, you're prepared, you know it's going to go well because you bring something to the table, you've been through it. You may have role played. If you go to a workshop about this, you would most likely have been exposed to role play with a moderator, a facilitator who can train you, and I'm sure, Stephen, you've done that, can train you by role playing with you and saying, all right, if you say it like this, this is how I will receive it. Things of that nature.
So what is effective feedback?
I can sum up effective feedback in one word. It's actionable.
Mm-hmm.
The person is going to take action. And so not only is it actionable, but they're motivated to take that action. And most of that motivation is intrinsic. They want to improve, or they want to make a change. Also, let's not focus only, the feedback is not only negative. And if you make what I call reinforcing feedback, that should also be actionable, because you are giving feedback to a person that you want them to repeat or replicate a certain thing or a certain way of doing things or a success in future situations. And one of the problems in our workplace is that people don't get that kind of reinforcing feedback, because everyone thinks, well, we pay people to do a good job, they should do a good job. Why should I tell them they're doing a good job? Well, it's kind of motivating if your boss comes into you and tells you you aren't doing a good job, but very specifically, what are you doing well? So effective feedback has to be specific and it has to be actionable.
That's something that I had to learn. I clearly remember having to learn that how to do what Stephen just said. You want to express to somebody not just that they're doing a good job, but do more of that. That was great. That worked really well. And then to add to this, and here's why, right? You always have to explain the cause and effect. If you do more of this that we all like, you will get more of that win, more of that success. And that then leads to what Stephen said is intrinsic and is this motivation. It's, well, why wouldn't I do that, right? I've already done it. It's not something I'm forced to do. I've already done it. I'm already comfortable with it. I just do more of it and get more out of it. And that, I think, is highly effective in the vast majority of cases. If I tell someone, you should do X, and they're not comfortable with it and they don't know how to go about it, it will be very hard to make that actionable.
So do you start off with praise, finding something good?
I recommend you don't do what's called the sandwich approach, which is what you're
Right.
alluding to here, Ed, which is you've done something good, but, and
Yeah.
then after that but comes the meat in the sandwich.
Right.
And that's what we were all trained to do in the 70s
Yeah.
and 80s and 90s. And I think it was effective when it was first introduced, but now everyone expects, as soon as you say you're doing a really great job, they're expecting that but, and so the good stuff goes over their heads. And now they're waiting for that hammer to come down,
Mhm.
and their mindset changes. They're not receptive or as receptive as they could be to the rest of the conversation. And then the sandwich approach was taught. Then you finish the conversation with a positive. Like, I know we've talked about some things that need to be changed, but I really believe in you, and you're a really great employee. And all these platitudes that again have no they don't resonate with today's audience now. So first of all, don't start with the either give the reinforcing feedback, as I call it, or give them the enhancement feedback, as I call it.
It's a little bit like that protein burger that Joanne ate. It's just lettuce. The meat is the meat, and the rest is just lettuce, and it may not be as substantial. I learned the sandwich approach as well, and that was one of the things that I felt wasn't effective for me, came hard to me, because I'm much more improvisational and impulsive than that. I can't really kind of, okay, chapter 1.1.1. Here's the first leaf of lettuce. You're doing a great job. Chapter 1.1.2. But, it doesn't work like that for me. I mean, I've been on the show enough times to know that you all know that I'm not like that. It has to be natural. It has to flow. Would I prepare? Yeah, sure. But it can't be this stifled, stiff approach of let's go through these points one by one and make sure that the bad part is in the middle and that we end with the good part to lift you up again so that you who are receiving the feedback will mutter a thank you and walk out the door and immediately forget what I said at the end.
So the approach that you're recommending, Stephen, is we got to talk about these things. I'm being graded by my boss, so I need to have this conversation with you. And don't be afraid. We're not going to chop off anything. Do you be as specific as that? Just be human?
Yeah, you be human, but I'll give you first of all, let's talk about a mindset change to me here for effective feedback is drop the words positive and negative from your vocabulary and your mindset. There's nothing, if your purpose of feedback, so you have to understand the purpose of feedback is to help somebody improve their performance or their behavior or their attitude. There's nothing negative about that. So if you go into it with the mindset that I'm going to help this person improve, then you won't be hesitant about having the conversation. So changing your mindset's the first criteria, and then changing your vocabulary. So I now coach people to call it reinforcing feedback, which means I'm going to talk to you about things you're doing well that I want you to repeat and replicate, or I'm going to talk to you about enhancement feedback, areas for improvement, and keep those as we just mentioned, keep those as separate conversations. I'll give you an example of the reinforcing feedback, and you'll see how quickly it can take, because people say, well, I don't have time to give that kind of feedback. So Christian, I thought you did a wonderful job on your presentation this morning. I thought you were well prepared, but most importantly, I thought when the audience asked questions, you were very comfortable in responding to those questions, and the way you responded to those questions not only built confidence in the content that you're delivering, but it built a confidence in you as one of our senior leaders. So I just want to tell you what a great job you did in today's presentation, particularly in terms of preparation and your ability to handle the questions. Now, that took what, 40 seconds, 45 seconds? And I hit two things there. talked about preparation. So make sure, Christian, in the future, you prepare your presentations very well and be comfortable. Don't be nervous in handling questions because you did a very good job. Those are both repeatable and replicable, and they're very specific. And I showed the impact. That's what Christian was talking earlier about the
Cause and effect.
yes, thank you. And the cause and effect. And so what that did is show that it built confidence in the audience in his presentation. That's the impact. Well, that's what Christian wants to do. He wants to have impact as a leader. That is effective feedback, and it takes 45 seconds to hit all those buttons if you do it properly.
One of the things that stuck out with what you just said, Ed, was the word grading. And I'm just applying what Stephen said about the positive and negative and throw out the concept of grading. Because grading really can't be used if you want to, as Ken Lloyd always says, feed forward, as you want to, when you want to improve somebody, enhance somebody's performance, enhance somebody's impact. You can't really grade them. You can't really say, oh, you got an 8.3. That was really out of 10. That was really good. Now, next time, you better get an 8.75. I mean, that's completely against what we're talking about. Completely. There shouldn't be grading at all. There should just be impact, cause and effect. You're more effective if you do this, or try that, or this worked really well, and you saw, again, the cause and effect, right? You saw the audience respond to it. You may have done something that was really clever and smart, and the audience didn't respond to it. Was that bad? Was that good? Well, it kind of was neither, right? Because you didn't have the impact, but that doesn't mean it was bad. And okay, so would you give them a 6.5 for that instead of a 9.5 because the audience didn't play along with it? Maybe you just had a bad audience. And the next time you do the same presentation, the audience will love it. So it's really a matter of taking the situation into context of looking at what happened in this particular instance. Yeah, maybe what could you have done differently, but maybe also you did the right thing. They just didn't respond the right way or the way you intended. But if you try it this way, maybe they will respond differently. I've had conversations with people when I was a relocation consultant, and they just would answer in monosyllabic terms when I asked them questions. So I had to learn how to ask open-ended questions, because otherwise I wasn't getting the information I needed to do a good job. So I think I learned how to, and this was learned, to ask questions like, how would you like your relocation to unfold? What is important to you? Things like that, so that people don't just say, yes, no, I don't know, and you're not really getting anywhere, and it becomes more of an interrogation than a benefits consultation call, which is what it should be.
Stephen, is this an American thing, or is it done the same way in Asia? Excuse me.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Unfortunately, I've got a guy doing his leaf blower right outside the door right now. So,
Oh, well, I'll try to remember what I said here, but
I could speak up a little louder.
American or an Asian
You'll
thing.
go away in 30 seconds, but for right now, I can't hear a darn thing.
okay, I'm going to say
Ask Christian a question, and then I'll come back to you.
yeah, okay. So I was saying, is this feedback conversation relevant to Americans only, or is it similar or different? And if so, different how? In Europe, in Asia?
Okay, so Asia, first of all, I can't say anything about. Never lived there, never even been there. Ask Stephen that when the leaf blower is done, and hopefully has been impactful. European, I think it depends on where you are. My own experience has been there's a lot of still very hierarchical thinking. You got to do as I say. The American idea of self-help, of bettering yourself by taking classes or reading books. You know, think of Carnegie, think of Zig Ziglar, think of all these people that have written a lot of self-help books. That to me has been always has been an American idea. When I started really reading those, even as a teenager, I thought this is very different from what I'm experiencing. It's anecdotal oftentimes. It's, you know, there are people that may or may not be made up that are doing these and these things, and they're being used as examples. That's not what I was used to. Now, having said that, nowadays there's of course a ton of self-help books, either translated or in the original language in whichever country, right? So it's more, I would say the answer to your question is it's a more of a global phenomenon because it's influenced by these American pioneers of that industry. That would be my take on it.
Stephen?
Can you repeat it so I can hear the question this time?
I'll try to repeat it. Is the conversation we're having primarily an American phenomenon, or is it equally the same kind of a dialogue in Europe, Asia?
The
It's
feedback
fairly,
conversation.
yeah, it's fairly similar. There are obviously some cultural connotations that take into place, you know, particularly in cultures that are more hierarchical in nature, where you don't speak up to the boss. You don't necessarily have as much dialogue as you would in the U.S. culture or Australian cultures or others. But the same thing is the key thing is around the world, my experience, and I've trained people on every continent except Antarctica because it's too cold down there. But the
Would love to see
the
that.
same lack of training, for mid managers. And you know, you think about where do mid managers learn their managing and leadership skills? Well, they tend to most of them learn it from the people that they work for. So if their leaders haven't been trained, this thing just keeps escalating. It's kind of like, you know, where do we learn our parenting skills? Well, we learn it from our parents, good or bad, or our spouse's parents, good or bad. And so sometimes we say, well, I'll never be like my father. I'll never be like my mother. I'm going to do things differently. But we learn from the way we are parented. Well, the same thing we learn from the way we've been led in organizations, and then we tend to repeat that unless we're told otherwise or get exposed to, you know, different thinking like Christian has and I have, and Dr. Ken Lloyd has, and Ken Summers have, and some of your other guests that have been on your shows have, that we need to change our approach to the way we're leading people. And this is one of the most significant ways to change our approach to leading and developing people. Because, you know, when we talk about feedback, we often focus on building people's competency or capacity, their time. We need to add a third C in there. We need to build people's confidence when we're sharing feedback. And again, we haven't been taught to do that. We don't focus on that historically. But building up people's confidence is going to make them a better employee. They're going to be more productive. They're going to produce better results. They're going to be more innovative. And so we need to put that into our thought process as how we're going to enter feedback conversations and make them conversations that develop capacity, competency, as well as competence.
So
the nice thing
we
about
have
that is-
around 7 minutes remaining for you. So let's go to Christian.
So the
And
nice thing about that, what Stephen just said, is you can use this both as a leader in your business life, in your work life, and as a parent. And as a father of two daughters, that's one of the things that I felt was very useful to me, learning that in my work life and then applying it to my home life, you know, building confidence, particularly because they're daughters, and particularly because there's always, wherever you look, there's still sexism, there's still, oh, girls can't do that kind of thing. And you learn how to, you know, build them up, not in an unrealistic way, not with necessarily participation trophies, but in celebrating what they've done really well, in pointing out what their strengths are and what they're already bringing to the table, and also showing them how they can develop. And this to me is very much one circle of behavior and learning how to improve on it when I teach this, when I act as a mentor, and when I act as a dad.
So, Stephen, you mentioned mindset change. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's a mindset change. It's the fact that I sort of mentioned a couple of the mindset changes. You're having this conversation to develop a person, to help them become better. And the other thing to understand is I can't change anybody. I can't change Christian. I can't change you. I have to give you the right reasons for you to make those changes, for you to buy into those changes, and for you to go make those changes if it's changes, or for you to replicate and repeat what I think you're doing well. That's up to, but our job as leaders is to expose that to the person. And that's again why, Christian used the word words cause and effect. I use the word impact. If we describe the impact for both reinforcing feedback as well as developmental feedback or enhancement feedback, what is the impact if you make the change, and what are the likely consequences if you don't make the change? That's the impact. And if we don't explain that in these conversations, we're not giving that person enough information for them to decide whether they're going to change or not, whether, again, intrinsically, they're going to make that change, and to what degree are they going to make a change. The other thing about this, just for your audience's sake, what we're talking with Christian and I really are focusing on is that feedback is an ongoing process. This is different than the end of the year or annual or semi-annual performance review, which has formality to it. And yes, in those conversations, you do hit on both the reinforcing and the enhancement aspects. It's one conversation. It's a different kind of conversation. These conversations about feedback are ongoing. You should be having feedback conversations with every employee you have. I would suggest at least every 6 weeks. Now, some people, it might need to be weekly. Some people, maybe every 6 weeks would work. But if you're going more than 6 weeks without having shared feedback with one of your direct reports, I think you are not doing the best job possible. It's not an optimum way to help that person develop.
So there's a transition between helicoptering and hands off.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And sometimes you have to let people make a mistake. I mean, as long as it's not career shattering or doesn't have major impact on the corporations, it's not ethical, it's not social etiquette, it's not a huge financial. Sometimes you have to let people make a mistake so they learn from it. Using that same analogy I said earlier, I would have a separate conversation with Christian. And let's say I thought he had a slide that had a couple of slides that had too many words on it. Well, my conversation along those lines would be, hey, Christian, I know you're preparing next week's presentation. I noticed 3 weeks ago when you made that presentation, which remember went so well, you had 3 slides that had a lot of text on them. And I noticed when those slides were up, the audience was reading the slides and not listening to you. Did you happen to notice that as well? See, now I'm getting him involved in the conversation. He says yes, he says no, it doesn't matter. We continue. What do you think you could do differently? Christian could say, I'm not doing anything different. I like my slides the way they are. Okay. Minor presentation. Go ahead and do it. But let's both of us monitor the audience next week when you give that presentation and see if you do lose their attention. He does, minor error, he loses their attention, he can recover, but he learns from it. Or he says, well, I could use less text in the slide, or I could use some photos to illustrate this, or I could use some multiple slides to convey the same point. Great, Christian, which one would you feel most comfortable using? He says, I'm going to use multiple slides. Okay, great. Let's do that and let's see how it goes. So I'm letting him suggest the solution. Now that it's his solution, he's more bought into it to begin with. And if he disagrees with me totally, and it's not a career breaker, like he's not presenting to the owner of the company or the president of the company, I can let him make a mistake and let him learn from that mistake if it goes badly the second time. That's leadership. That's mentoring. That's coaching. That's helping to develop his competency, his capacity, and his confidence.
What about in Latin America? Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Latin America.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say Latin America, again, some cultural aspects to take into it, but again, you're going to be developing your people. I'm actually presenting next week to a Venezuelan business group in Mexico City. And I'm going to be talking about these same things. So ask me in 2 weeks' time, I'll tell you what their feedback is. But I'm pretty sure they're gonna say, yes, we need to start doing this, because the generational aspect of the workforce is starting to outweigh the cultural aspect of the workforce in many places. Sorry, Christian, I don't know if I interrupted you, but jump in.
No, I interrupted you, but I wanted to make a point here about how you just demonstrated Socratic dialogue. That's exactly what a master in this does. And I think it's something that you really have to learn. Probably takes a lot of time to learn. But it's this notion of leading the person that you're talking to develop their own insights. Because they're intrinsically, go back to that concept, intrinsically motivated to use their own insights. And
So,
what you're doing is you're leading your myoites, as it's used in Greek. You're leading the person that you're having the conversation with through your questions to develop their own insights and to come to the conclusions themselves, rather than you telling them what the conclusions are.
Absolutely.
so as we come to a close, because I know you have to leave, Christian, what does Socrates have to do with this?
Read Plato. Socrates, who never wrote anything, it's Plato saying what Socrates did and said. There are these dialogues where Socrates doesn't say a whole lot. What he does say, though, is he elicits feedback, he elicits insights from the people he talks to. Haven't read that in a long time. I did in high school as part of our Greek classes, but this is how it's done. Stephen just demonstrated how it's done. Wouldn't it be better if you do this? What do you think will happen if this happens? This is the way to do it. And like I said, this isn't easy. Stephen make it look very easy. It's not. It really isn't.
So would it be
practice it?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
so would it be too much of a micromanagement thing, Stephen, by saying instead of using sentences on your slides, just go to bullet points?
Yeah.
Yes, it would, Ed, but
And,
that's
I mean, less than make a rule, less than 5
Yeah.
words.
yeah, and that is what happens in today's world, and that is efficient feedback, but
That's
it's
right.
not effective. Yes, and Christian will go do it because I'm his boss, but is Christian going to be happy about it? No. Is it going to strain our relationship? Perhaps a little bit. You see, so that's
Depends on how I feel that day. Yeah.
exactly. And that's the difference, Ed. Like, I can send an email to somebody, which is highly efficient, but if I pick up the phone and call them, it's more effective. And using this approach, and Christian's absolutely right. It is Socratic in nature, the approach, and that is what leads to buy-in. That's what leads to other ideas. And maybe Christian can, in that conversation, he may come up with another idea. He says,
That's right.
I could play a video to demonstrate this. Damn, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Great idea, Christian. Why don't you do that and add that to your presentation? Now we together we've created a better presentation, or
That's right.
his idea, but it was me using this approach that spurred that idea. And that's what a great leader does. That spurs that innovation in people.
And we just had that without
Sorry, gotta go.
without otter. No otter.
No order. Thank you
Thanks,
so much,
Christian.
both of
Great
you. That
talking
was
with you.
fun. Thank you.
Keep smiling.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Oh, well, that was great having him involved.
Yeah, he's got and like one thing I love about Christian, he admits he's had to learn these things, and I admit I've had to learn. Let me tell you something. When I ran a group of 23 people at a major U.S. bank, their operations in Asia. I did not do this at that time, but I was also 30 years old at that time. I hadn't been taught this. I hadn't been thinking about this. This is something I've learned the hard way. I've learned through doing it the wrong way. I've learned from talking to other people and trying different methodologies before I came up with this concept of how to share effective feedback and the language around it. So Yeah, I can admit my mistakes, and people who worked for me, what, 40 years ago would be laughing about this conversation now, going, "You didn't do it that way then." And I admit I did not do it that way then.
Well, thank you for doing this session. Lively and really good.
All right, thank you. Great
Uh,
show.
I have a follow-up question um, that has nothing to do with this, but and I don't want to do this on the air. So
Okay,
I'll be ending this now. Thank you for being a partner
thank you.
here. Thank you.
All right, my pleasure. Thank you.